If you read the Australian newspaper today, as you always should, of course, you would have seen a story there from me about online censorship during the pandemic. Censorship that's still happening in this country as we speak. Information from the Department of Home Affairs shows the government intervened to have posts taken down from platforms such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram 4,213 times. That's in less than 3 years. That's about 4 times a day, taking COVID-19 posts down. And we don't know what's being taken down or why. Thanks for joining us, Alex. What do you know about what information's been taken down? Have you got any indication from the government at all what was censored, both when your party was in government and since then when Labor's been in power?
Yeah, well, Chris, not really. We don't know much more than we did this time last night, really. Estimates was effectively an exercise in trying to justify what I think is pretty unjustifiable, frankly, and that is this birth of the true censorship industrial complex that exists in this country and all over the world now. We've seen what this looks like in the United States with the so-called Twitter files, where we saw Twitter being basically instructed by the intelligence services in the United States there to curate what was being seen through Twitter. But here in Australia, we seem to have our own version of that, and it seems to be getting brushed off effectively because, as we were told today, this was just one department taking the lead from another department, in this case the Department of Home Affairs, using its mechanisms at the behest of the Department of Health. And this becomes a great big bureaucratic conga line when really what we are looking for is freedom of speech. Now, we accept that that can't always be absolute, but we don't know what was being taken down. I suspect there was a whole heap of stuff that was probably debunked and was probably quite accurate at the time. If this is not alarming for people, that their bureaucrats are exercising this kind of muscle, then I don't know where we're up to in this country, Chris.
Yeah, this is a real worry. It shows the creeping remit of government, really, doesn't it? Because I've always supported strong measures to combat terrorism. We've needed them. But of course, civil libertarians always warn that when you give up any liberties, then governments can expand. And what's happened here is because Home Affairs is looking online all the time to counter terrorism, Health has just said, well, why don't you cast an eye over it for COVID stuff as well? And someone should have said, no, don't do that. It's not right.
Well, that's exactly right. It's exactly what's happened here. And of course, it begs the question, where does this end? I mean, we know that the Department of Home Affairs from the last round of budget estimates or supplementary estimates are now tackling climate change as well. So how long before we start seeing Home Affairs being instructed or of their own volition using this same mechanism to pull down posts where people say, you know, I think solar panels and wind farms are highly expensive and unreliable sources of power? I mean, this is the problem with the slippery slope. We don't know where it ends. And as you said in your intro, what needs to happen is a full and proper Royal Commission into the COVID period, devoid of government interference, where we get to the bottom of how this all happened, because you're absolutely right, this stuff is creeping while we're sleeping.
Now, about that Royal Commission, Anthony Albanese from opposition said there should be an inquiry. He didn't specifically say a Royal Commission, but a national inquiry. After he won government and became Prime Minister, he reiterated that he should do that, but we've seen nothing. What can you do from opposition to try to force a Royal Commission?
Well, look, I think it's probably the same that we can do in a lot of range of these issues, is just keep bringing it to the surface. I intend to keep calling for it. I know there are many others, and by the way, it's fairly cross-party, this approach. I know that senators from One Nation like Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts, Senator Ralph Babbitt has called for this. I think Senator Matt Canavan and Gerard Rennick. There's a real cross-party push for this, but it's got to require the goodwill of the government. The government has got to say, we don't care what this shows up about some of our mates at state level. We've got to get to the bottom of this for the good of the country, lest Australia become nothing more than a vassal state for globalist forces.